here's some news from the West Bank. This was hinted at a couple weeks ago, and it seems like this has been approved. Israel turbocharges West Bank settlement expansion with largest land grab in decades. Yes, the largest settlement expansion in 30 years. Israel has approved the largest seizure of land in the occupied West Bank in over 3 decades, a settlement tracking group said Wednesday, a move that is likely to worsen already soaring tensions linked to the war in Gaza. Israel's aggressive expansion in the West Bank reflects the settler community's strong influence in the government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the most religious and nationalist in the country's history. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, a settler himself, has turbocharged the policy of expansion, seizing new authorities over settlement development and saying he claims to solidify Israel's hold on the territory and prevent the creation of a Palestinian state. Authorities recently approved the appropriation of 12.7 square kilometers, nearly 5 square miles, of land in the Jordan Valley, according to a copy of the order obtained by the Associated Press. Data from Peace Now, the tracking group, indicate that it was the largest single appropriation approved since the 1993 Oslo Accords at the start of the peace process. I will add my own air quotes to that. Settlement monitors said the land grab connects Israeli settlements along a key corridor bordering Jordan, a move they say undermines the prospect of a contiguous Palestinian state. UN spokesperson Stephanie Dujarric called it a step in the wrong direction, adding that the direction we want to be heading is to find a negotiated two-state solution. The newly seized land is in an area of the West Bank where even before the outbreak of the Israel-Hamas war, settler violence was displacing communities of Palestinians. That violence has only surged since Hamas's October 7th attack ignited the war in Gaza. Settlers have carried out more than 1,000 attacks on Palestinians since October in the West Bank, causing deaths and damaged property, according to the UN. More than 1,000 attacks on Palestinians since October. So you're talking about 1,000 attacks in 9 months. That equals about 4 per day. Is that correct? 4 violent incidents per day against the Palestinians in the West Bank, which was not where the attack on October 7th was launched out of. 4 a day. That math checks out.
Well,
on average.
That's what Bassem Youssef said, right?
Yep.
You want to see what it looks like without Hamas? Look at the West Bank.
Look at the West Bank. Exactly. The land seizure, which was approved late last month but only publicized on Wednesday, comes after the seizure of 8 square kilometers, 3 square miles of land in the West Bank in March and 2.6 square kilometers in February. That makes 2024 by far the peak year for Israeli land seizure in the West Bank, Peace Now said. By declaring them state lands, the government opens them up to being leased to Israelis and prohibits private Palestinian ownership. This year's land seizures are contiguous, linking 2 already existing settlements to create a solid block near the border with Jordan. The lands were declared to be closed Israeli military zones before they were declared state lands. The Palestinians view the expansion of settlements in the occupied West Bank as the main barrier to any lasting peace agreement, preventing any possibility of a cohesive state. Most of the international community considers the settlements illegal or illegitimate. Israel captured the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem in the 1967 Mideast War, territories the Palestinians want for a future state. Israel's current government considers the West Bank to be the historical and religious heartland of the Jewish people and opposes Palestinian statehood. Israel has built well over 100 settlements across the West Bank, some of which resemble fully developed suburbs or small towns. They are home to over 500,000 Jewish settlers who have Israeli citizenship. So this is something, once again, how did us, the two of us with, limited knowledge of this conflict, and by limited, I don't mean limited in terms of compared to the average person. We knew more than the average person about this, but we knew far less than we knew now. A simple look at a map told you this was the plan dating back, way before October 7th. This has been the plan forever. And the fact that 2024 has seen an unprecedented acceleration of this is proof that you don't need to know that much to know that, all war is bullshit. That was the chant that Jimmy Dore led introducing
Yeah.
Jose Vega. Whether it's Ukraine, which is our next segment, or whether it's this, it's never what they tell you it is. And in these two cases, not to merge both pieces, we'll save Ukraine for the next segment, but in both of these cases, the motivation is just the most obvious thing in the world from day one. And you really wonder, how deluded do you have to be as a population not to even realize this, much less voice any opposition to it? It really is. I mean, this, when you think about what's happening now with Trump v. Biden, you think about in the debate, where was this? I mean, this is a massive issue. The whole Israel-Gaza issue itself got about 2 minutes of airtime in the debate. Never a question about this. Never. The American people's eyes are never drawn to this. Yeah, there are articles that come out. Yeah, it gets some TV airtime, although now the campaign is probably going to swallow that. It'd be interesting to see how foregrounded this conflict is through the home stretch of what is shaping up now to be the most tumultuous campaign season perhaps in modern American history, given the fact that they're probably going to have to swap the nominee out. Like, is this going to go into the background? Are we just going to normalize this all over again? We can't allow that to happen. I was telling Russ, it's a bit soul crushing, as funny as this like debate debacle was, and as seismic an event, which just warrants all the coverage we've been giving it. It is soul crushing in the sense that it inevitably takes some coverage away from this issue.
Sure.
And we have to be careful not to do that. And we will not do that. But it requires some effort, because when you see a story like this just come and go, doesn't get mentioned in the debate at all. We're not seeing this on TV at all. Largest land grab in over 30 years. 2024, biggest land grab year ever for Israel. We knew this going in. We knew this as soon as October 7th happened. We knew this was the motivation all along. And it's going to require a continued presence. Now they're talking about, I mean, obviously the August DNC is going to be just insane, especially if they swap out Joe Biden. It's going to be insane on that level. But even taking that out of it, it was supposed to be insane anyway on this level. We were supposed to be out protesting this, and we still should be. So it should be doubly and triply insane on all fronts. But this has to remain focus number one for the time being. All this political circus shit, this week, obviously, it was the huge story. Going forward, not just this cycle, months, years, this has to be the huge story, because this is an ongoing crime.
Well, when you look at languages, it tells you a lot about the people, right? What they have words for. So, yes, the fact that Germans developed the word Schadenfreude says something about Germans. The Israelis have a word for establishing facts in the field. There is a word for that in Hebrew. It's essentially, the spirit of it is essentially better to ask forgiveness than permission. The fact that they have a word for that tells you quite a lot about the mindset of Israelis, because the entire history of the Israeli state has been an exercise in establishing facts in the field and forcing the world to accept those realities. So they took 1967 as a pretext to indefinitely occupy these people's land. Which again, people love, the Zionists will say, well, what about the land you took from Mexico? We made the people who live there citizens.
Right.
You want to make all the Palestinian citizens? Well, that's what we call the one state solution. We'd support that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So make them all citizens, and then they're gonna have a say in the political process. Oh, it's not going to be a Jewish state anymore. So what you're saying inherently is that you are supporting apartheid. There is no other definition of that. That is why you were not able to do what conquering nations normally do, understanding that you can't just occupy people forever, that you have to make them part of your empire. You wouldn't do that. That is why there were all of these problems. It's not complicated. It's the most simple thing in the world. You just completely disenfranchised people in their own home. But if you go back, which I'm now really doing a lot of, I'm reading Elon Pape. I'm watching a very good video series that's built largely around his work about the whole evolution of Zionism. It is not an exaggeration to say they understood from the beginning that this was a settler colonial project. And remember, at the time that they first conceived Israel, colonialism was not out of fashion. Colonialism was cool. I can't remember the exact name. One of the early settler projects actually had colonial in the name. Like, it was cool to be a colonialist, right? That made you a big, grown-up, sophisticated political project to be a colonialist. Like, that was not, colonial brand coffee. You could name some shit.
Right.
It was not stigmatized. It was actually promotional to call it a colonial project.
Yep.
It was later on when people's minds changed about that. Oh, no, it's not a colonial project. It was understood from the very beginning that they would have to displace, ethnically cleanse, at the very least, the Palestinian population in order to do this. And there are writings from Ben Gurion, early leaders of the Zionist movement, saying, yeah, they're not going to like it. They're not going to like what we're going to have to do to get them out of here. And the early descriptions of the Arabs, of the first Zionists who went there, are not descriptions of hostility or anti-Semitism. They describe them as incredibly friendly, almost like children, very quick to befriend you, very generous. So why were the Zionists describing them this way if these people were inherently anti-Semitic? They didn't get anti-Semitic until people claiming to be Jews represented themselves as being inherent to the Jewish religion, stole their land. So then these people are going to say, we hate Jews. Well, why do they feel that way? Who represented what it means to be Jewish in a way that any people who had that done to them would hate you if you say that's what being Jewish is? It's not what being Jewish is, but why would they know that?
Please clap.